good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are all having a great day, a great week, a great weekend, whatever time it is that you are clicking on this video. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much for taking a chance on someone else's perspective on this case. Hopefully you will find something that you enjoy about either my presentation or you learn something from this video and you decide to stick around and subscribe. To my current subscribers, thank you so much for your support. You have no idea how much you all mean to me. If you are not yet subscribed, I would love it if you considered subscribing. I have noticed that a percentage of you who come back on a regular basis to watch my videos are not actually subscribed. So what gives? Just hit the button. It's not that hard. And it costs no money. Just kidding. I'm not being an asshole here. For everyone who is commenting, please know that your comments mean everything to me. Your likes mean everything to me. I can't necessarily thank all of you individually, but I do want you all to know that every single like, share, comment, and subscription mean the world to me. So thank you so much. Again, for those of you who are new here, hopefully you will find that I'm your cup of tea. And if not, that's okay too, because you have the ability to click out of here at any point. No hard feelings on my end. Please feel free to comment. Just remember to keep it classy. Everybody has their own opinion and they're entitled to it. So far, I think we've been doing a great job at keeping the comment section a safe space to share that opinion without people getting too insulting. You can say your opinion without insults, okay? That's just not going to fly here, all right? So just know that you're wasting your time. So now with all of that out of the way, let's get into today's video. This is part 3, episode 5, which is a continuation of the timeline for August 13th of 2018. And we're gonna pick up right where we left off in part 3, episode 4, which was at 9:30 a.m. on August 13th, 2018. I put out an analysis video of the 85 minutes that Chris was at Survey 319 alone. If you haven't checked that out yet, I will put the link up at the top right of your screen, as well as a link to the playlists for all my Watts videos in the description box below. Please never be afraid to comment your opinion on these videos, even if your opinion doesn't seem to be the most popular one, because it could be very useful in getting to the truth. Sometimes it takes a different perspective to make certain things make sense. Remember, on my channel, you help me get to the truth. I'm merely reporting what I have learned through researching all of these things and then stating my opinions on it. That's it. It takes many opinions and perspectives and theories and answers to questions that need answers to either keep as possible or toss out as not very probable in order to get to the truth. There are many other channels, great channels, who have been on this case since day one. We all have opinions on what we have learned. Some are the same, some are different, but most of us want the same thing. For the information that we have picked apart to one day aid in an investigation into Nicole Kessinger. Now don't get it twisted. It is not a reopening of the case against Chris Watts. He's exactly where he needs to be. It is not to pull the families back into rehashing or reliving their trauma. It is a new investigation of Nicole Kessinger.
Nicole Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
And her possible role as an accessory to the murder of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico Watts, either before, during, or after the fact. There has never been an investigation of Nicole Kessinger. She has never even been listed as a person of interest. This would be an entirely new investigation. Did she have knowledge of the crime in advance? Could she have stopped this crime from ever taking place by going to law enforcement? Did she conspire with Chris Watts? Did she knowingly delete important text messages or phone calls that could have led to the bodies being found sooner? Nicole Kessinger was never vetted. She did not willingly produce herself to law enforcement out of care and concern for the missing. She produced herself to law enforcement because she was confronted with emails on Anna Darko's computer files. They knew of the affair between her and Chris. These coworkers were also talking to law enforcement. Anthony Brown is just one of the people that saw these two together. Nicole Kessinger was merely doing, quote unquote, damage control. She was trying to save her own ass. Period. This investigation would also be to look at Jim Gutowski and Danielle Haydahl, two of Nicole Kessinger's close friends who were there at her apartment the weekend of the murders and the days following. It would be to re-interview Charlotte Nelson, Nicole Kessinger's confidant, regarding the relationship between her and Chris. It would be a whole new group of people investigated for a whole new set of possible charges. Does that make more sense to those who continue to say, this case is closed? There is no reopening. It would be without prejudice and blah, 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 blah. Yes, you are correct. And I am well aware the case against Chris Watts is closed. But the case against Nicole Kessinger has never been opened. Now, there is a statute of limitations on conspiracy to commit murder, and it is about 5 years. However, there is no statute of limitations on conspiracy to commit murder if minors are involved and or the deaths were considered to be violent crimes. We have both in this case. There are always exceptions, of course, and Nicole Kessinger could use that as a defense to avoid conviction, but we're nowhere near that. We can't even get anyone to look twice at her. Why? Well, in my opinion, part of it is because it's too much work for one case, right? They would have to prove, for one, a shitty investigation. DA Rourke just got another 4-year term, and the longer that he's in office as the DA of Weld County, the longer things are pushed to their limitations.
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part she was forthcoming in the course of those investigations. We don't have any reason to believe that she had any prior knowledge or involvement in the death of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. I think that's the best way I can answer that.
So is this all for nothing? Not to me. Is it a pipe dream? Maybe, but it's certainly not for nothing, in my opinion. It is for Shanann, it is for Bella, it is for Celeste, and it is for baby Nico, whose lives were cut so drastically short for what I can only say was for lust, greed, and selfishness at the most diabolical level. That, of course, is just my opinion. Let me get off this tangent and get on with the video. I still don't know everything yet, and my opinion still could change. I mean, the more information that I learn, it already has changed for certain things. So anyway, let's get on with this, all right? So we're starting back up at 9:30 a.m. Chris Watts has already disposed of his family. The quote-unquote leak has been handled. Chad and Melissa have now left Survey 319, leaving Chris and Troy McCoy there. Survey 319 is, quote, locked out and tagged out, unquote, by Chris Watts and Troy McCoy, meaning that it is no longer a working site for now. And they are moving on to Survey 1029. Chris Watts leaves Survey 319 at 9:30 a.m. His geotag shows he drove for 8 minutes, a distance of 2 miles. Troy McCoy leaves Survey at 9:31 a.m. after closing and locking the gate, and his geotag shows he drove for 11 minutes, a distance of 2 miles. Troy McCoy did say during his interview that Survey 319 was pretty close to Survey 1029. You can also see that from this image. They're pretty close together. They do look to be 2 miles apart. At 9:39 a.m., Chris's geotag shows that he was at Survey State 1029, where he met up with Cody Roberts, and he stayed there for 3 hours and 13 minutes. Just behind Chris at 9:42 a.m., Troy McCoy's geotag shows that he too is now at Surrey State 1029, where he stayed for 42 minutes. That seemed strange, only 42 minutes. He told law enforcement he was at 1029 for, quote, pretty much until the end of the workday, unquote. That's a pretty short workday. Let's see what happens. At 9:49 a.m., Shanann receives a voicemail. At 9:58 a.m., Chris made a login to the Groupon app from his personal phone. I believe this was for him to look at that reservation for Aspen for that following weekend. There is no movement on Chris's personal phone after 10 a.m. 10:03 a.m., Cassie Rosenberg texts Shanann, quote, honey, you have me worried. Please tell me you're okay and just don't want to talk, unquote. At 10:03 a.m., Sandra Ruszczyk, Shanann's mother, made an unanswered call to Shanann. Now, Frank Ruszczyk told law enforcement that Sandy had made several calls to Shanann that morning as well as texts, but this is the only call from Sandy that's on record. Just this one call. And there were no text messages recorded. Here is Frank's interview where he says this.
My wife was trying to get a hold of Chris. Well, first she tried to get a hold of my daughter that morning, that Monday morning. She kept calling her, couldn't get her, so she texted her, and she texted her something. Well, she says she texted her.
10:06 a.m., Centura Health Physicians Group called Shanann's phone and left a message. I'm more than certain it was to inform her of her missed appointment or ask her if she was on her way. You know how they give you that call, like, hey, you're late. Are you on your way or are you not coming? Because insurance is going to charge you anyway. 10:10 a.m., Chris searched for a song by Metallica called Battery. Now, we talked about this song in a prior video, and I put the full lyrics on the screen, though I do recommend listening to it if you want to really get a gauge on the way Chris was feeling, why that song would be a song he would listen to directly after killing his family. It's actually very eerie. After doing the egregious things that he did, we have lyrics like, cannot kill the family, lunacy has found me, bridging on insanity, cannot stop the battery. And it reminds me of the video that most of us have seen, and I think I already showed it in another video, but Chris had been given the gift of a Metallica concert from Shanann and had images from that concert stored on his phone.
The kids are thrilled with your birthday present.
Oh, yeah, definitely wearing this. Are you serious?
Serious.
Hell yeah! Oh my goodness!
Cece got her ice.
June 7th. Oh my goodness.
Now, he was more than likely familiar with that song and the lyrics before this search, but Chris said that Nikki had texted him to look up the lyrics to that song, and that's what he did. So I've always kind of found that weird. Why would Nikki say, out of nowhere, like they haven't even spoken that morning, allegedly, and she sends him a text message that says, hey, look up the song to Metallica's Battery. Like, does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. Some people think it was like a code for him to be like, I did this, along with the pictures. But anyway, let's keep going here. 10:20 a.m., Sandy texted Chris asking if Shanann was okay. Nicole Atkinson said she spoke with Sandy and that Sandy was worried about Shanann and the girls. So this had to be before Sandy spoke to Chris, but after she called the school, because Sandy already knew that Bella did not show up for her first day of kindergarten. Instead of responding back to Sandy with a text message, Chris called her back. She didn't answer, and then she called him back. And they spoke for about 2 minutes. At 10:25 a.m., Troy McCoy started his truck for 20 seconds, according to his geotag, and he then stopped it again. There was 0 distance traveled. He's still at Surrey 1029, and he stayed there an additional 3 hours and 33 minutes. So now we know he was there for 42 minutes, and then he got in his truck and he started it. He didn't go anywhere. He started it for 20 seconds, and then he turned it off And the truck stayed there for another 3 hours and 33 minutes. So he did spend the rest of the day at Survey 1029. He just, for some reason, got in his truck and turned it on for 20 seconds. And I wonder why. Because he didn't move it. It says 0 distance traveled on his geotab. So I don't know. That's kind of weird. I wonder why. And just keep in mind that that was at 10:25 a.m. At 10:28 a.m., Sandy texts Chris, quote, "Is Shanann okay?" unquote. Chris made an unanswered call to Sandy. She called him back. They held a 1-minute conversation. Sandy told Chris that Shanann was not answering her phone. She told Chris to call all the hospitals and let him know that Bella never made it to kindergarten. Chris told Sandy that Shanann was fine and that she just took the girls to a friend's house for a play date. He explained that he and Shanann had a little fight that morning before he left for work, and that Shanann was, quote, in one of her moods, unquote. Can you just imagine how helpless Sandy felt? She's all the way in North Carolina. She's at the mercy of trusting her son-in-law, whom she has grown to love as her own over the years. And yet, she knows he's lying. She has this intuition that he's lying. She spoke about it on Dr. Phil. Before Nicole Atkinson ever called Sandy about being worried about Shanann, Sandy had already had this sixth sense that something happened to her daughter. She had that mother's intuition. She says that it woke her up. It was so strong. Like I said, they spoke about this on Dr. Phil.
I felt my daughter's spirit the moment she died. Something woke me up, and I sat at the foot of, sat up, and a spear went through my forehead, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, Shanann. And I said, Holy, something happened to my daughter. I knew. I swear to God, I knew. I woke up Frankie. I woke up the whole house. I said, something's wrong with Shanann. I'm telling you, something's wrong. And
we didn't know she was missing yet. We didn't know anything.
But you knew.
She knows all the time. She's got intuition. I don't know how she knows these things.
So what did y'all think when she came to you and said this?
Oh,
I didn't think anything of it. Yeah, I was like, Mom, you just worried. She's probably sleeping.
Nothing of it.
10:29 a.m., Chad McNeil told law enforcement that that's when he noticed Chris on the phone. Chad said that he learned that some type of security alarms had been going off at the Watts home. He said that Chris took approximately 5 or 6 calls while standing near Troy McCoy's truck. Cody Roberts said that himself, Chad, and Melissa were watching a video at Chad's truck while waiting for Chris to cool down. He said that Troy was at his truck and Chris was at his truck while Chris was on the phone. So a little difference in the story. At 10:33 a.m., Chris Watts searched for hotels near Aspen. 10:41 a.m., Nicole Atkinson leaves her home in Firestone to go look at a house near 1721 Tulip Street, a 16-mile drive. From 10:41 to 11:11 a.m., a 30-minute journey, Nicole Atkinson said that she drove to Longmont, Colorado to look at a house for Cassie Rosenberg. We all know now, and if you haven't been watching my series, you're about to know, that Cassie and her family were planning to live with the Watts family while waiting to build their own house in Colorado. So I don't know if they were looking for a house to rent instead of staying with the Watts, being that Cassie was well aware of the marital issues, or if they were looking to buy an already built home, but this does make sense to me that Nicole Atkinson would be doing this for Cassie as a favor. Also, this is when both Nicole Atkinson and Cassie Rosenberg begin to discuss Shanann not being respondent to anyone all morning. 10:42 a.m., Chris called the Westin Snowmass Resort. He held a 2-minute conversation. Likely, he was looking to cancel the reservation that Shanann had made for that upcoming weekend for the two of them. At 10:44 a.m., Sandy called Chris again briefly. 10:45 a.m., Chris searched for Groupon to include the company's contact information. We know that Shanann booked that Aspen trip through Groupon, so likely he was told by the Westin Snowmass Resort that yes, they would cancel, but he would also need to cancel through Groupon. Of course, that's just speculation. At 10:51 a.m., Chris called Sandy back. They held a 1-minute, 12-second conversation. At 11 a.m., only 30 steps were recorded on Chris's personal phone. 11:11 a.m., Nicole Atkinson arrives at the house on Tulip Street in Longmont, Colorado. She was there until 11:46 a.m. via her Life 360. 11:21 a.m., Troy McCoy got an O2 alert on his gas monitor. And this triggered not just one, but 3 calls from the IOC checking to see if there was a gas leak. Troy's reasoning for this was that his truck was on and he went to grab a wrench out of the back of it, and his monitor must have picked up the exhaust from his running truck.
And I got a O2 hit at 11:21 a.m. on my gas monitor because I was getting a pipe wrench out of my toolbox, and if you stand too close to that exhaust while your truck's running, it'll give you a hit. So the IOC called me 3 times.
Sensitive.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
they had to call me 3 times because now anytime our monitors ding or we get a hit, the IOC calls to verify that we're okay.
Okay. Now, remember when I said, remember what time he turned his truck on and off? It was at 10:25 a.m. So wouldn't that alert have been at 10:25 a.m. then? And why would you need to turn your truck on to get a wrench out of it? You just open up the door and go in. You don't need to turn your truck on to get something out of it. So these times do not add up. This is a straight up lie. Troy's truck was last turned on and off at 10:25 a.m. This begs for the answer to the question of what was Troy really doing that caused his gas monitor to go off? This was serious enough for the IOC to call him 3 times to make sure that Troy was safe and that there was no leak. There is a protocol that Anadarko has for if their O2 sensors go off, and that is that they immediately leave the area they're at, or they go upwind from the area that caused the alert. I really do wonder why IOC felt the need to call 3 times for one alert. I don't know if we have the whole truth on that. What about you? 11:30 a.m. Shanann's friend Lauren Arnold said she tried to contact Shanann about how her doctor visit went, probably wondering the gender, but she got no response. Carrie Wood, the director of Primrose School in Erie, said that Alba Orantes, the assistant director, spoke with Shanann's mother midday. Carrie asked Alba what time exactly, and Alba said that it was around 10:30 a.m., again asking if the girls were dropped off. 11:42 a.m., Christina Meacham texted Shanann, quote, "Hey mama, are you okay? Please give us a sign you are. We are worried," unquote. 11:46 a.m., Nicole Atkinson texts Shanann again asking if she's okay, telling her that she's coming to her house. Nicole Atkinson goes straight from the house on Tulip Street to the Watts home. This was a 14-mile drive that took Nicole Atkinson 33 minutes at a top speed of 57 miles per hour. We see this on her Life 360. At 12 p.m., Chris said he was just busy working, but by noon he realized he had still not heard from Shanann. He called and texted Shanann. He said, quote, "Hey, call me," unquote. Around 350 steps are recorded on Chris's personal phone at 12 p.m. 12:02 p.m., Chris said he received a notification from his Ring doorbell that there was motion at the front door and that a visitor was detected. At 12:10 p.m., Chris received another notification that there was someone at the front door. Chris talked about this with law enforcement, and here is what he had to say. Now, this is taken straight from Discovery. At 12, I texted her again. Call me. Nothing. And then about 12:10 p.m., that's when my doorbell visitor, another one came on my phone and it said it was Nicole. And I was driving. I put her on my phone to see if she was just trying to, I could hear through my phone saying, I get to Shanann's. That's when I called her. What? I'm pretty sure I just got dumber reading that out loud. What does that even mean? At 12:16 p.m., people begin to contact Chris about Shanann being MIA. Josh texted Chris on behalf of his wife Cassie, asking all the same questions that the girls had been asking. Quote, "Have you heard from her today?" Unquote. 12:16 p.m., Chris takes 2 pictures of sunflowers in an open prairie. The metadata in Detective Pearl's report suggests that this picture was taken at Survey 1029, but it is eerily similar to Shanann's burial site, as you can see here. 12:17 p.m., Chris's phone got an alert, and this is Nicole trying to get into the house. Cassie Rosenberg said she was on the phone with Nicole when she went to the Watts house, and that Nicole was showing Cassie the house through her phone video. So they were obviously on FaceTime or video call. Christina Meacham said that she was also on the phone with Nicole and told her to put the code in and open the door. At 12:18 p.m., Chris called Nicole for 1 minute. He obviously got the alert that she's trying to get into the house. He asked Nicole what's going on, and she told him that she hadn't heard from Shanann the entire day. She also told him that the car was still in the garage and that Shanann's shoes were still by the front door. Now, the thing about all this is, according to Nicole Atkinson's Life 360 app, she didn't arrive at the Watts home until 12:20 p.m. So how was all of this Ring doorbell stuff going on before 12:20? Was someone else there trying to get in before Nicole Atkinson got there? The very first Ring alert was at 12:02 p.m. and the second one was at 12:10 p.m. Chris also seemed quite tripped up in his explanation for those Ring doorbell alerts, making no sense and seemingly very nervous with no real explanation. Like, why would he be nervous about that piece? Nicole's there, knocking on the door, right? He's probably annoyed. There's nothing to be, like, what's there to hide about that? You're admitting to it. It kind of makes me think that someone else may have been there. I don't know. 12:20 p.m. to 12:47 p.m., Nicole Atkinson said she was at Shanann's home. She was knocking on the door and ringing the doorbell. She said she could see Shanann's shoes still sitting by the front door from the night before. You know, those flip-flops that Shanann always wore. You can see her wearing them when she walks up to the door. Nicole Atkinson said she tried the code for the door, but the top lock was engaged, so she couldn't gain entry. That top flipper lock was allegedly installed by Frank, Shanann's dad, when they lived with Chris and Shanann. Apparently, Celeste kept opening the door and getting outside, so they put it in to make sure that the girls couldn't get out the front door without someone knowing. I have a 4-year-old. I completely understand this. I have 4 kids, and the toddler years are literally about being one step ahead of an extremely curious kid with absolute no fear, 24/7. Right? We got to do a lot of things that may seem weird to people who do not have toddlers that are super crazy curious. But what was said by everyone who knew that family well was that that was the only reason for that top lock, that it was only engaged when they were home. Then again, they hardly used the front door. I mean, they mainly were going in and out through the garage. So it would make sense that if Shanann flipped it after coming home the night before, it might still be locked. It's possible that Chris may have forgotten about this small detail and never meant for it to be locked. It's also possible that Chris made sure it was locked, so that in case anyone did come, they couldn't get in. Nicole Atkinson said that she yelled through that open space in the door, but got no response from anyone and heard nothing inside. She backed her car up to the garage so that her son Nick could stand on the trunk and see through the garage windows, checking to see if Shanann's car was inside. Once Nick confirmed the car was in fact in the garage, they went back to the front door. They began shouting Shanann's name a few more times. They also went around to the back of the home. They saw that the bar for the sliding glass door was down and in place, so they couldn't gain access to the home that way either. Nicole Atkinson also noticed that Dieter was crated, likely because he wasn't running around and barking at all of this commotion. She may have even heard him from the basement barking. Nicole said that she then called Chris. She said she told him that the car was there and Shanann wasn't home, that the girls didn't make it to daycare. Chris told her that they went on a play date. Nicole said, quote, "Well, if they went on a play date, why doesn't she have her car?" Unquote. Chris then proceeded to tell Nicole, quote, "I don't know if you know this, but me and Shanann are separating and we're going to sell the house," unquote. Nicole said, quote, "Chris, your personal stuff is none of my business, and it's not my concern right now. Either you'll work things out or you won't. But where is your wife?" Unquote.
I had my son with me, my 16-year-old and my 2-year-old, and I go to their house, and I knocked on the door, and I rang the doorbell, and her shoes that she had on the night before were right inside the door.
And those were inside the door, and you could see them?
Yeah, I could see them, because the way their door is, it's a door, and then there's 2 glass panels on each side.
Okay.
Oh, so she didn't answer. I knocked. She rang the doorbell. She didn't answer, and then I tried the code. I didn't even think to look for the car yet, but I tried the code, and then when I went to open the door, they have one of those locks like you have in a hotel room up top.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
thing that flip over.
That was flipped. So I couldn't get in, but I mean, you could stick your arm in, but you couldn't get in.
Right.
So I was like, okay.
So you have the code for the door?
I do have the code for the door.
Okay.
But I couldn't get in.
Okay.
So then I was like, why would they flip this lock? The only time I know of them flipping that lock is when Cece, their 3-year-old, tries to escape. Or, I mean, I don't know if they flip it at night because I'm never there when they go to bed, but the only time I've seen them use it is when they're on the inside of the house to keep Cece from going outside, because she's at that age where she can open the door and she escapes. So the lock was flipped, and I was like, I yelled through the door, nobody answered me, and then I told Nicholas, my son, I was like, because the garage panels where you can see in, it was too high for me. I'm like, come look and see for cars in the garage. And he couldn't, so then I backed my car up and pulled it up closer to the garage, and he stood on my hood to look and see, and her car was in the garage. And I'm like, why would, like, in the back door they have a sliding glass door too that you can see from the front door, and they have one of those things that comes down. That was locked
Cage
too.
bar?
Yeah, that was locked too. And I'm like, and the dog was put up, and I don't know if they cage him all the time, but as far as I know, they only do it when they leave the house, so I don't know. And then I don't remember at what point, I mean, I could look at my phone, but I did call Chris and said, I was like, Chris, I'm worried about Shanann. Or I said, her car's here, but she's not at home. Do you know where she's at? Like, it's not, I haven't heard from her this morning. He then told me that she did not take the girls to daycare and they were going on a play date. And then I turned around and I was like, well, if they went on a play date, why doesn't she have her car? And then he proceeded to tell me, he's like, I don't know what Shanann's told you or hasn't told you, or if you know any of this, but he's like, and I'm not trying to bring you into her personal stuff, but me and Shanann are separating and we're going to sell the house. And at which point I said, Chris, your personal stuff is none of my business. That's not my concern right now. Either your wife and you will work things out or you won't. But where is your wife?
Again, I keep thinking, how did Nicole Atkinson not get there until 12:20? Yet Chris said he saw her on the Ring camera at 12:10 p.m. Well, actually, he didn't say he saw Nicole Atkinson. He said, and then about 12:10 p.m., that's when my doorbell visitor, not visitor, another one came on my phone and it said it was Nicole. What said it was Nicole? The alert? Does Ring scan faces now and have facial recognition features? Did it back in 2018? I mean, not to my knowledge. Whatever. Let's move on. 12:21 p.m., Chris texts Josh Rosenberg back with this text message, telling him essentially the same BS story he has told everyone else who has asked where his wife and children are. Josh immediately replies back with, quote, okay, the girls are worried, unquote. 12:22 p.m., Chris said, quote, I know, I just saw Nikki on the doorbell cam. Now that makes sense. So he's saying he saw Nicole Atkinson on the doorbell cam, and that makes sense. Seeing Nicole Atkinson on the doorbell camera at 12:22 p.m. because she got there at 12:20. You guys, I don't know, but I really don't think that was Nicole Atkinson on the first 2 alerts. It couldn't have been. Yet those alerts happened. And when looking at the alerts, he seemed to get real nervous and stutter in his explanation. It's just my opinion. The door alarm alerted when Nicole Atkinson opened the door, and the alarm company called Chris at work. At 12:27 p.m., Chris called Nicole Atkinson and held a 2.5-minute conversation. He asked if she was messing with the door. She said yes, and he told her that he would try to contact Shanann. Also at 12:27 p.m., Ann Meadows, the realtor, sent an iMessage to both Chris and Shanann, saying that she was working on their market analysis and asked some basic questions about the house, as you can see here in this text. Chris replied to Ann as if it was just any other day, keeping up the charade that everything was normal. And he'll do this throughout the rest of the day, even after the police are called, and no one can get a hold of Shanann. I'm sorry, you can hear my 4-year-old. Eventually, Ann will also notice that Shanann isn't replying to her either, and asks Chris if everything's okay with Shanann. Ann replies back asking if another home on their street is the same model for price comparison, I assume, and confirming that they have a 3-car garage. Chris confirms the 3-car garage and tells Ann that he will check on that other home on Saratoga Trail when he gets home from work. And Ann replies back with this text. Now, Shanann's friends are blowing Chris up at this point. They're asking questions about what the hell is going on. Nicole Atkinson called Addie Maloney about the situation, telling her that no one can get a hold of Shanann and asking if she's heard from her. 12:31 p.m., Addie texts Chris, quote, "Hey, is Shanann okay? Everyone is worried. It's not like her to not respond, and we haven't heard back all day," unquote. Chris gave his generic reply to Addie too, this time adding that Shanann won't tell him where she is. He tells Addie that he will update her when he gets home from work. Addie thanks him and tells him that she's praying for them and loves them all. Chris said, "Thank you." 12:40 p.m., Cassie calls Nicole Atkinson, who is also talking to Christina, who is telling Nicole Atkinson to go back to the house and call the police. Nicole Atkinson said that Cassie called her when she was heading back to the house, but her Life 360 shows she was still at the house at this point. Now, Nicole Atkinson was relentless. She continued to call Shanann and knock on the door of the house, yelling inside the house, climbing on cars, trying to see things going in the back. Nicole's son, Nicholas, even set off the door alarm at one point. At 12:41 p.m., Chris called Nicole and held a 40-second conversation. Chris asked if they were still at the house messing with the door. And it's not funny at all, but oh my God, can you imagine how annoyed Chris must have been getting with Nicole Atkinson? But really, what an idiot. Shanann lived on her phone and was always in constant contact with these women. How did he not expect concern to rise so quickly? Oh wait, that's right. He was taken over by a dark entity and didn't know what he was doing. Either way, Nicole Atkinson told him no. She was not still there at the house, and in her interview, she admitted to lying to Chris, and that she was still there. Chris told her not to call the cops and not to kick his door in. 12:42 p.m., there was another garage door alert. Later on, after police got involved, Chris gave police permission to go through Shanann's phone. While searching through her phone, they noticed an alert that the garage door was opened at 12:42 p.m. Nicole Atkinson and her son were still there at that time, making me think that that is the time that Nick set off that alarm. He makes mention later that if they were sleeping inside, they definitely would have heard that alarm go off. That it is the type of alarm that makes your ears bleed. 12:43 p.m., Cassie lays into Chris, not caring anymore about his bullshit. They go back and forth, Chris making it clear that he doesn't want anyone to think that he's a bad person for wanting a separation from Shanann. Here is Cassie's text and Chris's generic response yet again. And this time, Cassie ain't having it. She replies, quote, "Sweetie, nobody knows about you and her other than Nikki and I. So where would she go if not with Nikki and not to Arizona where I'm at? Her car and shoes and everything is at the house. What the heck is going on with you guys that she would totally shut out everything? It's not like her," unquote. Chris replies, quote, "I told Nikki about it so she wouldn't freak out anymore at the house. I think Christina knows as well. We talked last night and I told her I wanted to sell the house, get something smaller. Separation will be best right now if we can't work through the issues. I really don't want you to think I'm a bad person, Cassie," unquote. Cassie replied, I love this girl, quote, "Right now, I don't care about you or your relationship or what type of person you are or not or what I think of you. And I'm not trying to be rude when I say that," unquote. 12:47 p.m., Nicole Atkinson said that she left the doctor office and texted Shanann, quote, "I have been to your house. You won't open your door. Your alarm is set. Your shoes are sitting inside. Your car is home. I'm so very concerned about you right now. I need you to text me or call me and just tell me you're okay. If you don't want to talk to nobody, you don't want to be around nobody, I get it. It's fine, but I need to know you're okay," unquote. At this point, Nicole Atkinson is still at Shanann's house. She is about to leave to go to the doctor's office to see if Shanann showed up for her appointment. Immediately following that text message, Nicole Atkinson leaves for the Centura Medical Center. Here is Nate's camera recording Nicole Atkinson leaving the Watts home at 12:47 for that trip. There are no stops recorded during that trip. Nicole's engine stays running. She says she sends her son Nicholas in to ask if Shanann made it to her appointment. And we all know that that answer would have been no. Nicholas gets back in the car. They drive directly back to the Watts house. That whole trip there and back was a total of 25 minutes, and Nicole and her son returned to the Watts home at 1:13 p.m. During that time period, Chris called his boss, Luke Epple, to let him know that he needed to go home, that he couldn't get a hold of his wife, and that her friends couldn't either. He told Luke that he needed to go home and figure out what was going on. Luke told Chris to keep him posted and to let him know if he needed the rest of the day off. 12:52 p.m., Troy commented that Chris needed to use the bathroom for a number 2 after getting off the phone. Was he literally about to shit his pants, realizing how quickly he got caught up? Now, Troy said that Chris started his truck and drove over to an area at the south side of the holding tanks at Survey 1029, and he relieved himself in the sunflowers. He was there for about 4 minutes. 12:57 p.m., Chris started his truck again. Several seconds later, Chris stopped his truck and sat for 3 minutes. At 1 p.m., very little movement on Chris's personal phone. Only about 5 steps were recorded. Also at 1 p.m., Lauren Arnold, Shanann's friend, who said that she called Shanann that morning to see how her doctor appointment went, she noticed on Facebook that Frankie made a post about Shanann and the girls being missing. At 1:01 p.m., Chris left Survey 1029, and he drives for 1 hour, a distance of 44 miles. He was heading home. At 1:03 p.m., Cassie, God, I love this text message. Cassie texts Chris, quote, "Right now, I'm worried about your damn wife and her well-being. Nikki's calling the police, period. She is broken emotionally, her blood sugar dropped due to her not eating, and it could cause her to pass out. So unless you want the police to bust your damn door down, you get home and check on your family. I'm sorry if I'm being rude or whatever, but I'm seriously concerned," unquote. In the midst of all these texts, Chris still tended to Ann Meadows, the real estate lady, and the concerns that she had about the house and selling the house, telling Ann Meadows that the basement is still unfinished and that there are no other upgrades in the home. Ann replied that 6508 Saratoga may be viable. 1:05 p.m., Chris told Cassie he was on his way home and not to call the police. He said he would be there in 45 minutes. Cassie replied, "Thank you." Quote, "Nikki and I know what state she was in all weekend, and we want to see she isn't in the house because this is seriously a concern," unquote. 1:07 p.m., Chris called Cassie and held a 1-minute conversation. Cassie said it sounded like he was driving. He told her not to call the police and that he didn't want the police involved. He said he was sure that Shanann was fine. Cassie told him that if he was not home in 30 minutes, that they would call the police. 1:13 p.m., Troy asked Chris if he was okay. He sent Chris a text saying, quote, "If you need anything, let me know," unquote. This again is also the time that Nicole Atkinson and Nicholas arrived back from their trip to Shanann's doctor's office. They stayed at the Watts home for 2 hours and 33 minutes until 3:46 p.m. 1:14 p.m., Chris replies, quote, "3-car garage. I will drive by the 6508 address when I get home," unquote. 1:30 p.m., Nicole Atkinson said that she and Shanann were planning to meet for lunch with a new promoter. At this point, 20 minutes have passed since Chris called Cassie, and he was still not home, so Cassie told Nicole to call the police. Nicole called Chris twice briefly. The first call at 1:31 p.m., she called asking where he was. He told her that he was on I-70, about 45 minutes out. And that's exactly what he told Cassie 20 minutes earlier, so I can see the frustration continuing to rise. Nicole told him that she was calling the police to do a wellness check. 1:33 p.m. Nicole called the Frederick Police Department and asked for a wellness check on pregnant Shanann Watts and her 2 daughters. Here is some of the recording of that call.
County Communications, this is Stacey. Hi, Stacey. My name's Nicole. Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and she's having issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages, and I'm just really, really concerned, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it, and I don't know what to do. I've called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other 2 daughters, but, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car? Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nicole? I'm at the house. It's 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick. And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out. Okay, Nicole, I'll go ahead and call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly. 2825 Saratoga. It's Sarcogatr. Okay, and the thing stands for trail. Thank you. Okay, Nicole, tell me exactly what happened. So, we were out of town for work, and we flew in last night. Our flight got delayed, and I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and she was very, like, distraught and out of the sorts because her and her husband are having issues. So, because she wasn't, like, eating or drinking and stuff like that. So then this morning, I was like, let me know if you need me to take you to your doctor's appointment because you're not feeling well. And I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us. They have 2 little girls that are 3 and 4. I mean, there's no movement in the house whatsoever. And he states that she didn't take them to daycare and was going to go on a play date, but they're both in car seats and her car is here. What's her name? Shanann Watts. It's Shanann Watts, Watts. When was the last time that you heard from her? When I dropped her off at her house, I watched her, made sure she got in the house. That was at 2 a.m. And her husband's name is Chris? Yes, his name is Chris Watts. And he told you that she went on a play date today with the girls. Okay. Yeah, but she told me last night when we were driving home, she's like, the morning's going to suck because I have to take the girls to daycare tomorrow. And I made the statement, well, you could keep them home with you. And she was like, no, that'd be more exhausting. She was like, I have to get up and take them because I have a doctor's appointment at 9. And I'm not trying to cause problems more between them. I just want to know she's okay. And Chris told you that he was on his way? Yes. I just talked to him. Well, I talked to the engineer. One of our other friends did via text because I was going to the doctor's office, and she said he would be here in about 30 minutes, and that was at 1:08. And then I called in and said, Chris, I'm at your house. I'm not trying to cause drama or anything. I just need to know your wife's okay. I was like, where are you? And he was like, I'm on I-70. I'm about a half hour to 45 minutes out. And I just said, okay. And then I hung up and called you guys because I'm just worried. Okay, Nicole, what kind of vehicle are you in right now? I'm in a white Dodge Dart. Alrighty, we do have a call in. Nicole, we'll have an officer come out that way as soon as we can. I would just advise you, to not try to make entry into the house or anything like that until the officers can get there. 2825 Saratoga Trail of a party who's checking on a friend who's pregnant who's not answering the door.
At 1:36 p.m., that call registered with the Frederick Police Department with the reporting party listed as Nicole Atkinson. 1:40 p.m., Officer Coonrod was dispatched to respond to the call and headed for 2825 Saratoga Trail on a well-being check. 1:50 p.m., Officer Coonrod arrived at the Watts home. 1:52 p.m., Nicole said she called Chris again because he still wasn't home. Officer Coonrod then asked Nicole to call Chris to see if he could give her the garage code so that they could gain entry into the house. He then goes to check around the side of the house, so we don't know if she called Chris or not, but there's no record of Nicole making a call or a text to Chris at that time of day. While Officer Coonrod is on the side of the house, Nicholas informs him that the garage code box doesn't work. I also want to take this time to have you notice that there is no screen missing from the windows to the basement. There's a screen here where Officer Coonrod is, and you can see that there's one on that farther window as well. There's no screen lying down or propped up outside of either of these window wells either. So I'm not sure where that false information came from, but it seems to me that it is in fact false information. Both screens to the 2 basement windows are on, and there is nothing resembling a screen propped up against the house or lying on the ground or anywhere else over here. And we can see this from a different perspective in a minute, which I will bring up. But we can also note that the window appears to be locked because Officer Coonrod appears to be somewhat messing with it. And I mean, I feel like he would slide it open. I don't know, but it doesn't open. The other window, though, I don't know at this time because he didn't try it. But there are no screens missing, and there are no screens lying about either. At 1:54 p.m., Officer Coonrod, seeing Nate outside on his back deck, asked if he's seen his neighbors today. At 1:57 p.m., Nate tells Officer Coonrod that he thinks that Shanann's diabetic. That's kind of weird. I don't know why he would think that. But here, you can see the full view of the windows again from the other angle. I mean, maybe people think that that small rectangular mat-looking thing is a screen, but that would not fit the window. So that would not be a screen for either of those 2 windows. And it doesn't even look like a screen to me at all. But what do you guys think? Now, when Officer Coonrod comes back around to the front of the house, Nicole Atkinson is on the phone with Sandra Ruszczyk asking for the garage door code.
Is it? His mom's gonna get it.
Why would she ask if she already knows it doesn't work? I mean, maybe Chris told her that it didn't work and she just wanted to make sure that they tried everything because it doesn't work. And my assumption is that Chris disabled a lot of things at that house and had been ever since Shanann left for North Carolina. So whether it was broken or disabled or whatever, I wonder if Chris had something to do with that. 1:59 p.m., Nicole makes that second call to Chris. She asked him why he still wasn't back yet and told him that the police were there trying to get into the house. And Chris said that he was 10 to 15 minutes out. Officer Coonrod then asked Nicole for Chris's phone number, and he makes a call himself to Chris. He gets voicemail. You can even hear the voicemail pick up in this recording. At 1:59 p.m., Troy leaves Survey 1029. He drove for 40 minutes, a distance of 25 miles according to his GPS. At 2 p.m., around 70 steps are recorded on Chris's work phone. After this, his work phone records nothing until 7 p.m. Also at 2 p.m., over 2 miles and around 530 steps were recorded on Chris's personal phone. How is this even possible, since he's driving home at this time? He's been driving since 1:03 p.m. He shouldn't have recorded any steps during this time. Also, between 1:30 and 2 p.m., Lauren Arnold said that she reached out to Frankie, Shanann's brother, after seeing that 1 p.m. Facebook post that said that Shanann and the girls were missing. She gave Frankie her number and he called her on Facebook. But people have been wondering why Frankie would have posted a missing persons report on Facebook at 1 p.m. because this would have been before the police were even called. Me, personally, I don't find that suspicious at all because people had been looking for Shanann since what, like 9 a.m., maybe even a little bit earlier. If it were my sister and I was that far away, like in a completely different state, I'd be pretty freaking worried by 1 p.m. And I'd be putting out an alert on Facebook too. I wouldn't be waiting for the cops to confirm what everyone already knew, right? Everybody knew that this was not adding up. Nothing about that morning made sense to anyone who knew Shanann. She was missing. They knew she was. And Frankie's all the way in North Carolina. And his only way of helping was to spread the news on Facebook to see if just maybe someone would have seen her And maybe someone would see his post and have known something. That's just my opinion. 2 p.m., Officer Coonrod gets a hold of Chris, and Chris tells him that he's about 5 minutes away from home. And he's not lying. He is. At 2:01 p.m., Chris stopped his truck for 4 minutes at 6507 Black Mesa Road before going home. Now, this location is about 2 minutes away from his house on Saratoga Trail. Why in the world did he stop there? At 2:02, Officer Coonrod asked for Shanann's phone number.
What's Shannon's number?
It's 910.
And 2 minutes later at 2:04, he calls Shanann. 2:05 p.m., Chris starts driving from Black Mesa Road to his home on Saratoga Trail. And at 2:06 p.m., Nicole is now on the phone with Addie Maloney. 2:07 p.m., Chris finally pulls up in front of his home. He shuts off his truck, and it stays there for 20 hours and 27 minutes. Also at 2:07 p.m., Chris's work phone logs onto his home router. At 2:08 p.m., Chris enters through the garage. He goes immediately to Shanann's Lexus. He opens the front passenger side door and appears to take something out of the car. Or maybe he's actually putting something inside the car. Some people believe that he was getting Shanann's ring. I don't know why people believe that though, but I did want to put it out there in case any of you know why people think that Shanann's ring was in her Lexus, because I haven't seen anything about that so far. So if you know why that's going around, let me know so I can, so I can look into it too. Because I think it's just as likely that he was hiding something under the pretense of getting something out or checking for something. I think it's just as likely that Chris was putting something into the vehicle as he would be getting something out of the vehicle. But either way, it's definitely suspicious, in my opinion, because, your wife's missing, you come home, you go directly to the car, you're not even trying to, pretend. It was weird, and I almost feel like there was something with him that he had of Shanann's, and he put it in the car to get it out of his truck. That's just what I think. Other people think he's getting something out. What do you think? This is where I want to point out, too, that Chris has changed his clothes. The shirt, pants, and boots are not the same as what he was wearing when he left that morning. These are also not the same clothes that Troy McCoy told law enforcement that Chris was dressed in when he arrived at Survey 319 that morning and saw Chris for the first time. Troy told investigators that Chris was wearing a baggy dark blue long sleeve shirt and baggy pants, as well as pull-on boots. He said that Chris had one pant leg in the boot and one pant leg was half in and half out on the other boot. He said that it was not how Chris would normally dress for work. He said he even asked Chris if he was, quote, slumming it today, unquote. When Chris pulls up to his home now, he's wearing a light gray long sleeve shirt, fitted pants, and lace-up boots. When did he change his clothes? 2:08 p.m., about the same time as Chris is messing around in Shanann's Lexus, Nate informs the officer that a white car left the Watts home at 1:48 a.m. This was Nicole Atkinson leaving after dropping Shanann off. Nicole even stated that it was her. Nate was then asked to go back into his camera footage for anything else captured today. Nate said that he would go look at it, quote, if he doesn't find her, unquote. As in, if Chris doesn't find Shanann and the girls in the house, he will then go through all of the videos for the last several hours.
Do you know there's no way you can look for today? During the daytime?
I can go look if he doesn't find her.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
At 2:08 p.m., Chris enters the house through the interior garage door. At 2:08 p.m., Chris's personal phone logs onto his home router. So his work phone logged in before he was even inside, and his personal phone didn't log in until he was inside the house. That's a little bit weird, but that's something to kind of take in, because if it always behaved that way, it says a lot about some of these phone calls and the in and out of the house he was doing the night before, which I also did an analysis video on that if you didn't see it. 2:09 p.m., Nicole tells Sandra that the girls' car seats are in fact in Shanann's car. Also at 2:09 p.m., Chris opens the front door to his home. This is when Nicole walks inside. At this point in time, she is on the phone with Sandy, Cassie, and possibly Addie, all at the same time. Now, pay attention to Nicole Atkinson here, because Footsteps of Murder, who I'm getting a lot of these visuals from, suggests in a separate video that Nicole seems to zero in on the stairs to the second floor. Like it's almost as though she sees something weird, or she sees something. She puts her hand to her forehead, which she does a lot throughout this body cam footage, and she stares at the first part of the stairs before the landing. Or is she looking at the stairs at all? I think, this is just my opinion, I think she may have noticed Shanann's suitcase, which was still at the bottom of the stairs in that little corner there, and possibly something else that we can't see. What do you think? In my opinion, Nicole saw that meticulous Shanann Watts still had not brought her suitcase upstairs, let alone unpacked it, which was so out of character for Shanann. Nicole may have also seen something that didn't belong there, but I do still have to look into that. That, in quotes, would be a bag. Some say belonged to Nicole Kessinger, and that it was in some footage and then not in footage later on. I believe this comes from Zavgirl's channel. I saw it a very long time ago. We'll be looking into that later. But one thing that you can see here quite clearly is that Shanann's purse is not on the kitchen island, as it would be soon. So now they're all in the house. Nicole's still on the phone with Sandy. Sandy tells her to check the knives, check the basement, and also to check a few more things, like whether or not the girls' meds or Shanann's purse are there. Nicole told her to hold on as they were making sure Shanann and the girls weren't in the house still first. Chris goes into the kitchen, appearing to be on his phone texting or looking at something, and he then goes to the basement door. He goes down to the basement to let Dieter out of his crate. Nicole told Sandy that there were a pair of both girls' shoes inside and a pair for each outside on the back deck on a chair. And here is that part of the interview.
It was odd to me because there was a pair of CC shoes right there, sat outside their shoe closet, and then there was a pair of shoes right by the back door. I think they were Bella's. And then for whatever reason, there was 2 pairs of shoes of the girls' shoes out on the back porch on a chair.
She calls it a porch. Now this is where we're going to end part 3, episode 5 of the complete timeline. If you are interested in viewing the entire series, please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so that you're notified when I upload. Trust me, you do not want to miss anything in this series. Once again, I want to thank you all for your support and let you know that I do the best that I can to get these videos out as quickly as possible. I really, really do. We are nowhere near done with this case, but I am already thinking about other cases that I can look into after this one. Cases where there is incomplete justice. I have seen a few suggestions of people talking about other cases they would like me to cover. I'm just going to tell you, suggestions are always welcome. Please have a great rest of your weekend. Please be safe, be happy, be healthy, and most of all, be unapologetically you. Bye-bye.